All right, people. Um, my name is Oluwatosin Isaac Olaoluwa, and I'm an addiction recovery advocate. Also a certified addiction recovery coach, and I'm here in WABHARM Foundation. With Dr. Muhammad Adamu. I have an amazing relationship with him, but we'll get into that as we get on into the conversation. But before we go into that, and for the sake of you, our audience, I'd like Doctor to please introduce yourself, sir.
Thank you very much, Isaac. My name is Mohammed Adamu, and I'm what you probably call an addictionologist with a specialty in mental health. I studied co-occurring disorder in the UK, where I worked in the NHS and the voluntary sector for about 30 years. Inner city boroughs like South London and mostly NHS, Haringey, the St. Anne's Hospital, the first dual diagnosis center at the St. Anne's Hospital in North London. The name of the first unit for dual diagnosis in 2001, when Professor Appleby released the report, the first report on dual diagnosis, was Maple Unit in Tottenham. So I was there for a couple of years and then moved east, where I worked with the North East London Foundation Trust, spent a lot of time there, and then even moved further east, where I worked with North Excess Partnership Foundation Trust. But most of my stay was in Barking and Dagenham, where I eventually took an what I would say early retirement or early release to come back to Africa after realizing in 2009 when Kofi Annan identified that the West Africa coast is no longer a transit country, that we are now a user country, a group of user countries in West Africa. So came back in 2009, did my research. Unfortunately, there wasn't much around addiction treatments. What was available was just what I would call cowboy rehabs, where you put like 200, 300 people in a 5-bedroom house and everybody just sleeps. There is no program, there's no structure, it's not clinical. So we thought, no, we can't let this continue like this. So myself and a few of my colleagues decided that we need to come to Africa, and we chose Ghana because of stable political environment and the friendliness and accommodating environment of the country. Okay. So we started with Leila Memorial. And Leila Memorial is named after my wife's older sister, who unfortunately passed away due to addiction. And Leila Memorial is a community drug treatment service, where it's an open access service where people just come in for screening, assessment, and brief intervention. And then we have a day program there to prepare people who wants to go into rehab, and then to work with people with depression and other minor mental health disorders that is associated with problematic drug use. So then after that, we started Redemption Place. Redemption Place is the only integrated dual disorder center in West Africa. And we take clients from all over the world, clients who have a drug and alcohol problem that meets the DSM criteria and the ICD-10 criteria for dependency and then mental health disorder. So the rehab is called Redemption Place. And it's been going on for quite a while now. We're doing very well. We've had clients from all over the world, North America, the United Kingdom, and quite a few clients from West African sub-regions. So it's been a very interesting journey.
Okay.
And even though I talked about my studies in the UK in addiction and mental health, but actually my background was mainly in veterinary medicine. That was my background. But I lost my brother, my younger brother, Ibrahim, to addiction. He was a stubborn young guy who started smoking cannabis and then evolved to using hard drugs. And then, like we all know, drug use and crime goes hand in hand. So he got involved in crime. And I think they went to try and carjack somebody, and he got shot and killed by the police in Lagos, in Lagos Island, actually, around Okeari Balogun area. And unfortunately, the family had to be called to come and take the body. Because after a couple of days and had gone through decomposition. So every time I talk about it, the smell comes back to me. And that was what changed my trajectory in life. And I became very interested in addiction because I was just taken aback how drug addiction can lead to mental illness. And I was curious about what is in the middle, the fine line between addiction and mental illness. So I then decided to pursue my career further in not just addiction, but co-occurring disorder.
Okay.
And that's me here.
Wow, amazing, sir. And thank you for that. While you were speaking, two thoughts were in my mind. You spoke about your wife's elder sister and your younger brother. And that brings to mind this saying, I don't know if it is statistically proven, that almost in every 10 families, you have like 7 or 8 of them touched by the issue of addiction.
Oh, absolutely. Because addiction is not just the individual using, it's a family illness. It disrupts the whole family. And once it disrupts the family, it can end up disrupting the community as well. Because what you will see is the family's preoccupation will now be on that particular child that is problematic, that is having problematic use of substances. And you'll see parents taking time off work to go and take him somewhere, maybe hospital or to see a counselor or to treatment centers. Again, financial issues will then come up because you need to take money from other planned areas to solve that problem. So it brings, once there is a financial issue in the family, it brings strains between parents. And it can easily, I've seen lots of cases where a child's substance abuse or substance use leads to the divorce or the breakdown of the parents' marriage. And then it impacts on the siblings as well, because then it actually is like a tsunami effect, because the siblings now see that, oh, hold on, our brother or our sister is using drugs and he gets so much attention from our parents, They follow him to school, they follow him to take him to hospital. They give him more attention than...
And they begin to model that.
Exactly. And okay, maybe to get more attention or to get loved, I might have to do the same thing. So it's a very destructive illness when it goes in the family. I don't think it's just a single person. No, it's a family illness, and the dynamics that it brings is just overbearing. Yeah.
Now, I like how you brought the illness conversation into it, because here in Africa, we look at it mostly from the standpoint of moral failures. Now, from the scientific background and from your wealth of experience, would you really say that it's just a moral failing, or there's more to it than we see it in Africa?
It's unfortunate that in some school of thought think that addiction or the use of drug is around moral failure. Unfortunately, that is very wrong. It's not true at all. Addiction is like any other illness or any other disease, like diabetes, congestive heart problem. there's a lifestyle aspect to addiction. You know, when someone has diabetes because of their lifestyle, or someone has high cholesterol or heart problem because of their diet or their lifestyle, it's not easy to change it like that. So you never know why somebody will go into drug use. And most often, I always tell my students, because I train, I provide training for professionals. Yes, I provide training for professionals in addiction, because there's a huge gap in the workforce development in West Africa. Even from our doctors, psychiatrists, most of them are not trained in addiction. So they just use the knowledge of psychiatry to treat, and then at times it's counterproductive, because dosing people up with psychotropic medication is not necessarily what solves the problem of addiction. There needs to be a balance. It is not that there is no role for psychiatry. There is a role, but I think it is not the main thing. With addiction, is a multi-professional approach. You will need a doctor, either a psychiatrist or an addiction psychiatrist, better, who knows more about
field on itself.
An addiction psychiatrist who knows more about mental health and how drugs impact on mental health. And that is why it's called co-occurring disorders or dual diagnosis. In Europe, like it's called dual diagnosis, and in the US or Canada, it's like co-occurring disorder. So with this scenario, I try to emphasize to them that it's an issue that you can always capture why people use drugs, although the reason why they start might not be the reason why they are still using it, but can be guaranteed that it's going to be within what we call PRP.
PRP would be what, sir?
Performance. Either someone wants to start using drugs to enhance their performance, just like athletes do. So it's not only athletes that uses drugs to enhance their performance.
Even workers.
Yes, in northern Nigeria and northern Ghana, stimulants are used to enhance. Farmers use stimulants to enhance their farm work, so they don't get tired easily.
Even sexual performance.
Sexual performance, absolutely. So that's one of the key reasons. Any kind of performance, and you can even look at it from the angle that people who get addicted or who use drugs for performance could be professionals. It could be a doctor. It could be your general practitioner. It could be your banker. It could be a lawyer, a top lawyer who has a lot of case to do.
And wants to meet up with all of
time.
this.
He has to read lots of books. So cocaine will be that kind of a lawyer's drug of choice. A banker who is busy flying all around the world.
To sustain the energy.
Cocaine will be a drug of choice. Then you now have people for relief. Some people use it for relief. And when I say relief, there is relief from
tension,
physical problems, psychological issues, physical issues. I've had a case of a woman who went through surgery for hip replacement, and he was prescribed morphine. And after she went home, her grandson kind of noticed that, despite the fact that the grandma is still using morphine, she's still hopping with them. She's not still very all right. So she introduced grandma to heroin. And surprisingly, when grandma took heroin, she didn't need the crutches anymore. So the heroin...
to the additional elation that she's going to feel like
And that is how grandma got addicted, got hooked on heroin. Then you've got people who use it for pleasure. That is the other P. So young men in their teenage years, late teenage years or early 20s, going to party. I think the vulnerable period is really for pleasure, is really for the transition from secondary school to university. It's always a very dangerous period, because People go to university, they want to feel among.
Yeah,
Now
where peer pressure also comes in.
peer pressure comes in, and now this is their first major freedom. So now I can drink, my mom is not here, my parents are not here, and you see other of their colleagues drinking or smoking, and they then tend to join in it, and it could get out of hand from it. So, and there are just young men as well who are shy by nature and will go to party. They see their other friends talking to girls,
and they feel left out.
They feel left out. Say, "Oh, my friend, tell me, man, you're so bold. How can you go and talk to that girl?" He said, "Oh, just take 2 shots of brandy to clear your eye." What in Nigeria they say, "Shine your eye." And then you shine your eye and you realize that, oh wow, it works. After a couple of drinks, the confidence is there and you're able to talk to the lady and the lady responded well. So that is the answer for you. So now every time you go to party, you have to keep using the same thing because it's worked. And that's the main issue around them, how people start drugs and why we cannot say it's just a moral failure. No, it's not a moral failure.
Okay, so that because in the course of your conversation, 2 things now stand out, because now understanding that it's not just a moral failure and looking at how we are wired, particularly in Africa, as regards religion and spirituality. The first question would be, what role does spirituality, religion play in working people out of addiction? That's one. Then 2, you spoke about the parents at some point. Now, what also is the role of parents in this conversation?
You see, let me talk about the spirituality aspect before we talk about the role of parents, because with role of parents, we need to think about the changes in the world we live in today. Although parents might have influence over their children, but with modern day life, their environment has a great deal of influence over children. That's why you see a pastor's child or an imam's child getting involved in drug addiction. It's not because of moral failures by their parents or they were not brought up well. No, you can't blame their parents for it. The environment is even worse. If you look at changes that's going on now, changes that's going on in our own time, mobile phone came when I was, I think, in my 20s in my 20s. That was when mobile phone came to Africa. Right now, mobile phone is everywhere.
Even the little
kids have mobile phone. And we're in the era of immediate gratification. Air travel is faster than before. There was a period when we are traveling from one part of the country to another. It might take you 2 to 3 days. Because of distance. Now, 9 hours, 7 hours. So we're in a different age. The whole world has become a global village. Your son or your daughter could be on the phone or on the internet with a young man or a young girl in Australia or New Zealand, as far as it is. So the world is changed completely. We can't hold parents responsible. That's not saying that parents don't have a role. They do have a role, but they cannot play God. They cannot be everywhere their children in. What you do is you give your children the best moral teachings or guidance you can. But you see, it's up to that child to take it and use it.
Responsibility.
Yes, and use it. They can show you decent behavior at home, but when they are out, they can be someone completely different that you will not recognize your child if you were to see him outside being himself with his friends. So we can't blame parents for this. Our environment plays a big role. And then when it comes to spirituality, there is a huge role that spirituality plays in recovery. And I am one that believes we have failed most of our young people, especially in West Africa. We failed most of our young people and people who have, and families who have addiction problems. Because one thing about us in Africa is that religiosity and spirituality is very important. People take church seriously, people take mosque seriously, but we have failed to integrate addiction treatment and recovery or any kind of intervention, we have failed to incorporate it into our religious or spiritual life, which is a huge minus.
Okay.
We could really engage the pastors more. They have a big role to play. We could engage.
And given their influencer.
Absolutely. We could engage the youth leaders into the program to be on our side as advocates. And then working with parents in churches gives a lot of knowledge where parents can easily report to youth leaders some of their concerns.
Like that's
after
accountability setups. Like, okay.
After you have shown them like the signs, just basic understanding of addiction for parents, for pastors, for imams. There is something we call Milati Islamia, where you use the Quran to work with individuals who are Muslims to get through their addiction.
Okay.
So just similar to the 12 steps that you can use the Bible in getting people. And there are people who did not even go to mainstream treatment, but they only went for 12-step facilitation, and they are able to kick the habit. So spirituality plays a huge role.
Okay, sir. Now, because of all this now, to bring us to this conversation of community engagement. Now, sir, how does that play out, particularly when we're looking at realities such as community programs, recovery programs? I don't think we have much of that here in Africa.
Unfortunately not. Unfortunately not. We do not have. The only country that has a community program is Senegal, and is a substitute prescribing service.
Okay.
And they didn't get the funding for that service because of drug users or because of addiction. They got funding for that service as part of HIV prevention.
Oh, okay. So it was not like an addiction based.
No. It's targeted at injecting drug users to engage them so that you minimize the incidence of transmission of HIV among, not just among drug users, but among the population. Because it's not just drug users who have encounters with each other. They have other partners as well. So, but in other West African countries, there are no community services. And community services are so important that if you make them an integral part of each community they serve, it's evidence have shown that it lowers age of consent, because families quickly run there without an appointment and say, oh, I'm concerned about this. But why community service might be a problem in Africa is because of prohibition.
Okay.
And most of the funding for drug treatment, which is extremely erroneous way of doing things. For example, now when you look at Nigeria, it is the NDLEA that has the remit or the mandate to provide both supply reduction and then demand reduction. But NDLEA is a drug law enforcement agency. So already they have criminalized drugs. How do you expect me, a drug user, to go and meet NDLEA that I'm asking for treatment? Then the same problem we have in Ghana. We have the Narcotic Control Commission. It's a law enforcement agency. So law enforcement agency, evidence again, all over the world have shown that funding law enforcement agency is counterproductive. Because number one, their job is to arrest you. The drug you are using is illegal. So and we have been saying drug should not be criminalized. Instead, they should increase the amount of healthcare facilities available. It's more of a health issue than a public health issue, than a criminal issue. But if you don't do that, you have an open access center. People will be scared to come in there because they will be labeled as drug users and they can be arrested because they are drug users coming into community centers. But if you don't provide that kind of a service, then there is no room for grassroots people in the community to get engaged and get facts. We will then see that we are over-dependent on rehabs, as if rehab is a kind of panacea for addiction. No,
and
it's
how many people of
can afford
masses can
afford the rehab, even government rehab in Ghana, in Nigeria, like the Arrow Psychiatric Hospital, the Kaduna Psychiatric Hospital, and that's another problem. Establishing drug treatment in psychiatric facilities is counterproductive.
Because
It's counterproductive.
it leads more to labeling.
Labeling, yes, and stigma. And moreover, not all people who use drugs have a mental health problem. So labeling drug users as mentally derailed or mentally ill, so they have to go to a psychiatric facility to get treatment, is counterproductive. No evidence supports that at all. Put them in other health issue areas, maybe a general hospital or a community hospital center, fine. But to establish rehab in psychiatric hospital is counterproductive.
Okay, so
it won't work.
We'll come back to some aspects of this conversation, but then I'm thinking, like, because I'm also from personal experience, I've been involved with alcoholism, marijuana, and some of these things. But in my own case, maybe because of some certain form of support, and maybe my own kind of person and personality. Now, but my thought is, we were talking around issues of labeling, stigmatization, and all that. That brings us to the fact that some people who are coming off drugs in recovery, they are not finding it very easy to speak up about their experiences and about their recovery. As a professional, if you were to maybe counsel them, how would you, what advice or suggestions would you offer to them in how they project themselves in the public, particularly as their representation also helps this ongoing conversation of addiction recovery? I don't know if that's fair enough.
And let me get your answer right about people who are already in recovery.
Who are in recovery. And the issue of dealing with the issue of stigmatization and stigma and all of that, labeling. How would you advise them to project themselves in because of this?
We must look at the key issue, the fundamental issue for individuals, either in treatment or post-treatment or in recovery, is the issue of confidence or self-esteem. You see, because of the stigma and the label, people don't want to use their experience as a platform to say, listen, I've been there, I've done it, and this is what happened. It's time for other people to see and learn from my own experience. So they tend to have low self-esteem. So they don't want anybody to know that they were users before. And they don't want anybody to know that they had even been, they've had problems with drugs and they've been to treatment or even maybe stopped on their own. But that is more of a self-esteem issue. And that should have been addressed while they were in treatment. Because in the course of going through rehabilitation, it's not just the drug. The focus on the drug is maybe for the first 4 weeks. But after that, it's more about other social issues.
The underlying factors.
The person's motivation in life, the person's preparation for change. Instead of just telling people, oh, you have to change what you are doing, you have to change your habit. No. Have you prepared the person?
How does the person change?
Yes. Prepare the person for change. What strength does the person have to effect that change? What are their deficits? And how can we replace or help them acquire the strengths that they don't have to help them address the change you're talking about? So too much emphasis is laid on change, but forgetting, does the person have the capacity to effect change very well? But if you don't look at that, that person's issue of self-esteem will still be there. But if you look at all of these psychosocial issues that forms part of addiction problem, then you will know that building people's confidence, improving their self-esteem, will then automatically improve their self-worth. And then they will not be shy or afraid to tell people that, listen, I've been there. Because the strength is not in what you have done, but the fact that you've done it and you've come out of it. Not everybody can say that. Lots of people die because of addiction, or lots of people develop mental health problems because of complications, because of addiction. But you have been there, you've done it, you're out, and you're progressing. There's nothing to be ashamed of. I think the person should look at themselves as a warrior because it's challenging.
Even a beacon of hope.
Absolutely. It's very, very challenging. And for someone to actually go through that process and come out the other end a better person, is something to be proud of. There's nothing to be ashamed of.
Wow. Thank you, sir. This would lead me to this now, sir. In your own professional experience and working over the course of the years, what would be your assessment, so to say, and your success rates in working with people? Because particularly from my own experience, relapse was a part of my journey. And some people will say relapse is a part of recovery. Some people will say relapse is not a part of recovery. So what would you say to that? How would you address that?
No, addiction itself is a relapsing illness. And relapse is part of the journey of recovery, absolutely. However, it is not an excuse because you see, it's just like when people say, "Oh, addiction is a brain disease." Not really. Addiction is not necessarily a brain disease. Yes, it's a disease, but it's not necessarily a brain disease. It impacts on the neurochemicals. It causes imbalance in the neurochemicals in the brain, but that doesn't necessarily make it a brain disease. And it's like people saying, "Oh, cannabis causes mental illness." That is extremely wrong and erroneous. Cannabis, it has an association, can be associated with mental illness, but it does not necessarily cause mental illness. There are so many things about genetics, one, then about the strain of the cannabis we are talking about, that comes into play. You know, when we look at that. So, sorry, I think I'm digressing. What was
the first one would be your own success story, success rate in the course of the work, then addressing the issue of relapse in the course of it as well.
Yes. Well, our success rate, thank God, our success rate has been very high. Very, very high. I'll say around 85% to 90%.
Wow.
There's a reason behind that, though, because it's not like other places are not doing a great job. But there's something called aftercare and thorough care. So we have a 9-month program, depending on the individual. After the assessment, we look at functional analysis. Is the person suitable for just the first 3 months program, which is detoxification and stabilization? And then is the person functioning, or how long have they stopped functioning? Did they meet certain milestones? And if they miss certain milestones, where are they in life? So if we have someone who has been using drugs for a while and have not been productive, they've not had any job, they've just been preoccupied with the addiction, then definitely just detoxing them and stabilizing them will not do the trick. So our next stage is cognitive restructuring, where we start changing individuals,
change
your thinking pattern. You change your thinking pattern. You learn to separate your emotions from your cognition. And once you engage more with your cognition, you no longer see multiple problems have one solution,
which is what addiction is basically
drug
about.
or alcohol. Now you start seeing, you start generating multiple solutions to single problems.
Awesome.
And once that is done, then we do an analysis of what we call skills evaluation. Did you drop out of school? Are you still interested in going back to school? Did you learn a trade? Do you have a skills, any kind of skill? Do we need to brush up that skills, get you into a new area, or whatever the person wants, not what their family wants? That is when we focus on it. And then we get them to either go back to school to complete their education, whether it's secondary or university, whatever it is. Or we get them to go and learn some skills that they are interested in that can make them productive in life. And apart from preparing them for returning to their natural environment, the truth there is another method to that madness. You see, addiction is such that our brain there's something we call plasticity of the brain. So our brain is like plasticine. It molds to whatever way we train it. You can train your brain. So addiction has caused our brain
to flow in a different direction.
In a completely different direction, because the drugs have hijacked the brain. The chemical imbalance is what the brain knows. And the brain, because the key chemicals, neurochemicals like serotonin, dopamine, adrenaline, or epinephrine, are there playing around with this individual. So if they don't learn new things, the neuron for the addiction will not get weaker, because it's strengthened, because that is what they have been doing for the past years. So those neurons are strengthened. But when you start learning a new trade, you are going back to school, you are no longer using drugs, you are no longer in that lifestyle, those neurons start to weaken off and they die off. And the good thing is the brain regenerates, the brain repairs itself. If you see the brain of somebody who has just stopped using drugs in month 1, and then by the 12th month, you take another PET scan, there is significant improvement. So the brain has the ability to heal itself.
Okay.
So one of the ways to help the brain heal itself is to acquire and learn new skills that you'll be using on a regular basis, which will then strengthen those neurons more than the addictive neurons. So that is how you are able to move away from it. But unfortunately, in West Africa, what we do is we stick people into rehab, whether faith-based or clinical rehab, wherever it is. But as soon as they finish, they go back home. There is no skills development. There is no proper support for aftercare and thorough care. So our relapse rate in West Africa is extremely high, extremely high. And this again can be managed through community services, because you are discharging somebody from rehab. Ideally, if they are going to back to home, where is the community service in their area? Because the community service should still hold them and help them exactly, so that they integrate slowly back into the community with support from the community staff. But we don't have this. So people are just sent back home. After a while, they are boredom, they are doing nothing.
Challenges of life.
Yes, they go back to what they know best.
Okay, sir.
Unfortunately.
All right, thank you, sir. In trying to round off 3 conversations, 3 thoughts now, sir. Well, how do we now begin to re-engage government in the course of this conversation, sir?
Well, engaging government is difficult all over the world. For example, look at the United Kingdom now. United Kingdom is reluctant. There is a drama playing out between in the United Kingdom. There is England is a state on its own.
Yes, sir.
Scotland is a state on its own, but they all form the United Kingdom. Then Ireland and Wales. Now look at a scenario where Scotland has passed legislation to open like needle exchange,
Yes,
or safer injecting rooms, and the government in England is saying no. So it's not only in Africa that we get problem of government or very old politicians with archaic idea of, or they don't have any kind of understanding. What most of the things they talk about is not evidence-based, is not based on science, is mainly based on what they think is morality. You know, you can't judge or use morality when it comes to addiction. The main problem that we are facing is the world has pursued prohibition, the war on drugs, for 52 years, since Nixon. And things have just gone worse. With this war on drug thing, things have gone from bad to worse.
So is that time we begin to have a new
approach? We need to think differently. No, we are not trees. It's only trees that are stuck in one place.
And in fact, it's even said that even trees even move. So.
Yes, their roots, at least they extend their roots. But we have been doing this for 52 years, and it's killed more people. Look at the opioid epidemic in the United States. In the United States has spent billions of dollars on this war on drug. But the impact of the war on drug is still there on them. There is a problem looming now, but the politicians are not seeing it as a problem. But the scientific world or the addiction treatment world know that it's a time bomb waiting to happen. the Afghan government announced that they are banning the production of poppy crops.
Okay.
Which is how most of the heroin that goes to Europe and other countries is from Afghanistan, about almost 85%. So now you imagine it. If they successfully shut down the production and the farming of poppy plants, we are going to have a serious problem in the West. And because that problem will blow back. Yes, the problem will blow back to Africa. The demand in the West is that there will be shortage of heroin. Then people who are already dependent on opioids will then start seeking alternative. So then fentanyl will come in. Other opioids will come in. There is a case of xylazine now being used in combination with fentanyl and other opioids. The death rate will be massive. I can predict that right now. So people are saying, oh, it's a great thing, Taliban is stopping this. And no, they're going to end up killing a lot of people because they will seek alternative. Drugs are as old as humanity. They're just been unfair to this issue of drug prohibition, because when HIV came, HIV was a big problem, an epidemic, and was killing a lot of people. But nobody ever said ban sex.
Yes, of course.
Because sex is a natural phenomenon. It's just like the use of drugs is a natural phenomenon. People have, as human beings, we have used substances to alter our moods, to alter our consciousness. Whether it's kola nut in Africa, kola nut is a stimulant.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
There are so many things that, as Africans, there are some leaves that you chew, and they give you the high. These are natural things. But they now look at it as, oh no, we are banning this. And Nigeria banned tramadol because of tramadol abuse. Now, is cutting the head the best medicine for headache?
No, definitely not.
So how many heads are you going to cut?
Definitely not. Which that will now bring us into this conversation, because like I said, it's not just about the government alone. It's also about the people. And you were talking about the community engagement. Now, as individuals and organizations, what's their role? Particularly, I'm thinking in partnership with organizations such as yours. What do you think, sir? What's the way forward?
The way forward is to stop funding drug law enforcement agencies to provide drug treatment or drug intervention. It is counterproductive. There are local NGOs, CSOs who are specialized in drug and alcohol treatment. It's high time the government engage with them, just like they do in the UK. Yes, the NHS provides drug treatment service, but most of the organizations are faith-based organizations that provide treatment.
They've been trained.
Yes. The Catholic Church all over the world.
Salvation Army,
they get involved in things like this. So there are organizations that government can engage with to help deliver evidence-based intervention to drug users and their family, not just to the drug users, and their families, to help them alleviate and change some of the difficulties and the challenges they face. But to continue to fund drug law enforcement agencies, our situation is just going to get from worse to worse, I'm afraid. So the way forward is, number one, critically look at the issue of prohibition. Prohibition is counterproductive. We need to start thinking of, one, decriminalizing drugs, or even, let's still legalize all drugs. Make it controlled. You want to buy your cocaine, so go to a pharmacy.
The excitement around it would be reduced.
Of course, it will be. Portugal is a good example. They were able to lower death rates, overdose deaths. Even people who were saying when Canada decriminalized cannabis, that cannabis use is going to go out of the roof and more kids will have mental health problems. Statistics shows that it's wrong.
In fact, many of us are now running even to Canada.
It's wrong. Portugal is a good example. Canada decriminalizing is a good example. And even the states in the US that have decriminalized cannabis is a good example. They are getting revenue from it. And it's not like it's free for all or open for all. No. You see, addiction is a teenage or adolescence illness. Most people who get into addiction is during adolescence. You see, and we know that adolescents often
experimentation
is whatever you tell them not to do,
that they want to do.
you are picking their interest in it.
Yes, sir.
So you legalize this thing, people can go into community service without being scared of being arrested or being labeled a drug user or a criminal. And communities too can come and ask questions. So young people will not depend on their friends in school to tell them about the function or how the pharmacokinetics of a particular drug. You can go to the experts. You have access to go to the experts. It's open access. So you don't get wrong information. You get the right information about the drug you are using. Yes, sir. And then you get brief intervention and you make a decision for yourself. Instead of scaring people and lying to people, if you smoke ganja, you go mad. They will ask you a question. I have Uncle Rasta Jerry, who has been smoking ganja for 30-something or 40-something. Why hasn't he gone mad?
Okay. All right, sir. So now, to now bring it down to, because you've done a bit of that, but to now bring it down to the individual level, and particularly as it ties into conversations such as prevention on a larger and communal level, how would you?
Universal prevention is extremely important, but it needs to be structured and coordinated. You see, because someone is an ex-user or have experience of addiction, does not make them a specialist in addiction.
Yes, sir.
It makes them a specialist in themselves.
Experience, yes,
but they will need, and drug experience is different from one individual to the other. So you can't say, I'm going to use my own experience to work with this person.
Yes,
no. Get some education, get some qualification in prevention. There's what we call universal prevention. You can go to schools, you can go to organizations, faith-based that I told you about, churches, mosques. These are gray areas that people need to explore. Provide the right information to them without scaring anybody or without factual information. Put it out there and
let them
make their own informed decision. But unfortunately, we don't have any of this now.
We're giving them that sense of responsibility to let them know that they can even make informed and very verified decisions.
Absolutely. And that support is always available where we can signpost people. We need to have a model of care. You know, each stages, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, and assign different organizations to this model of care. So anybody or a family who has someone with an addiction problem knows exactly where to go to, where to start the journey from. And government must make addiction treatments cheap, both in Ghana and in Nigeria. It's expensive, even from government's own facilities. A lot of people who can't afford treatment are left on the roadside or in the ghetto because their parents can't help them. For example, we are not a government organization. We are more of a social enterprise. And our rehab, we provide a premium rehab mainly for Africans or Black people in the diaspora, although we've had a lot of Caucasians as well come to our center from Europe. But we operate a premium service so that we can run our community service for free. Otherwise, there is no free lunch anywhere.
Somebody's paying.
And somebody says this is an NGO. The NGO, somebody is funding that NGO. And we are not getting funding from anybody. No government, no private or individual or philanthropist. No. Because we don't think that addiction treatment should be reduced to a beggar level where you start having to beg before. No. You can generate funds by yourself. Provide quality treatment. Charge the right price that equates the kind of treatment you have. You will have an allowance to fund free service for the most vulnerable in the community. So like in our NIMA center, we don't charge for assessments. We don't charge them for assessment. We don't charge for brief intervention. And if they want to go into rehab and they cannot afford our own, there are other small rehabs around that we refer them on to.
All right.
But then a lot of people too cannot afford that. If government can just make their own rehabs free, it will help a lot of people.
All right, sir. So to round this conversation up, sir, when do you see WABHARM Foundation in the next couple of years and going forward?
Well, I'm hoping that just like our name, West Africa Behavioral Health, Addiction and Recovery Management, I'm hoping that we have expanded into the 15 ECOWAS sub-region.
Oh, great.
And then we want to pioneer the community centers for addiction, the open access centers in each state. We are looking at Ivory Coast, Sierra Leone, and Nigeria first. So hopefully you'll be seeing us
very well and
somewhere in your community soon, very soon. Whether you are watching this from Sierra Leone, from Nigeria, from Ivory Coast, wherever you're watching this from, as long as you are in West Africa, we will be coming to a community near you very soon. And we will be looking at either doing it in partnership with local authorities or national government, or if we don't get to do that, like we're working now, we'll go on it alone. We'll do it alone.
Wow, thank you so much, sir. And thank you for the privilege. Thank you for having me. Thank you because you've been of great support in the course of my journey. And in fact, that's another conversation that I would want us to have, but because of our time, because personally, you've been supporting me for quite a while and even had me come to your organization to also see firsthand what you're doing. Thank you so much for the work you're doing, sir.
Thank you.
And I want to also commend you guys out there, everyone from wherever it is you're watching. You may want to have more contact with Doctor. Would it be okay if we have your contact lines put in?
Yes, they will put for
so
redemption.
Feel free to reach out to Doctor and let's see how this conversation goes on, particularly as we're looking at the wellness of everyone. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.